Hello, folks, and welcome back for the next instalment of the Remember the Regulars, Researching the Regulars tutorial series. This is tutorial 6, which will be our final episode in the series. And this time we're just going to take a very quick look at some of the things that you can do with the data that you're going to find in War Diaries. So this is by no means an exhaustive list of everything you can do. This is just like some examples of what I do with the data that I find in War Diaries. So you might find some more creative ways of using the data or your own ways. This is just kind of like an overview of what I do, just to give you an idea of some of the things that you can do with the information you find in the war diaries when you're researching the Home Forces and the regulars and territorial army units that were deployed in the Home Forces. Yeah, I just before doing this video, I realised that I hadn't updated the first slide, so I've clearly put a lot of effort into updating this initial slide over the last video. So yeah, that's something to keep an eye out for. As always, these videos are very kindly funded through grant funding from the Norfolk and Norwich Archaeological Society, so do check out their website. And, as I always say, if you have got an idea for a research project looking into the archaeology of Norfolk or Norwich, then please do consider the NNAS for grant funding. The process of application is extremely straightforward. Um, and yeah, I couldn't be happy with the money that they've provided, which is helping me to produce these videos, helping me to research the Second World War defences of Thetford through the documentary record, and it's helping me to do other things such as like a little blog series, which I'm going to start working on sometime next week, and also most importantly, get the documents from the National Archives that I need to add additional significance to the surviving defences of Thetford and show the role that the regular and territorial army played in defending the town during the Second World War. And this is a story that has not been told, so that's something that's vitally important and has been has been possible through this grant funding from the NNAS. So please do check out them. And as always, thank you to them for helping to ensure the production of these videos. So getting straight into things, this isn't. I'm not sure how long this video is going to be. I'm going to try and make sure it's no longer than the usual 25 minutes. But a good place to start is, as you saw in the first video, is to kind of review your aims and objectives. So once you've got all your information and got all your war diaries from the National Archives, and you want to just have a quick check of what your aims and objectives were to help kind of guide you in terms of um, thinking about your outputs that you want to get out of your data. So the key things for me in this little project are, in terms of things that I can do with the war diaries, are to build up an order of battle for the regular and territorial army units that defended Thetford and its local area, as well as a chronology of their deployments. So there's two little things there which we'll look at later. So an order of battle and a chronology or a timeline of deployment of units to defend Thetford. I also want to assess and determine defensive measures taken to defend the town, which is something that will come out of the war diaries. And another key output is building up a data set of information that I can then accession to Norfolk Historic Environment Service, which is the local historic environment record for the county. And this is vitally important because very little Second World information relating to the Second World War is actually accessed to historic environment records, which has a knock-on effect in terms of their preservation through the planning process. And today, unfortunately, a lot of people think that and have been led to believe that posting photos to Facebook and snippets of information is somehow preserving Second World War anti-invasion defences, and unfortunately it does nothing of the sort. And because very few people are encouraged to or have been encouraged to record directly with their historic environment record, a lot of Second World War defences remain extremely vulnerable. And as a result, there is a lot of catching up to do now in terms of demonstrating their importance as archaeological and historical uh, monuments, for example. And the only way to do this is through your historic environment record. And unfortunately, there's a lot of people that over the last 20 or so years haven't done this and have been led to believe that doing so, posting online and posting Facebook into dodgy online projects is somehow preserving stuff, and it doesn't. So yeah, key outcome of this is to produce a data set or a body of work that's going to be accessioned to NHES and show how significant the surviving defences of Thetford are today as reminders of the Second World War and how important they are as an archaeological resource as well. And finally, I want to produce interpretive materials and/or reports. So I'm going to, at the end of this little project, produce a report. I'm also producing a little blog series as well. So you want to have a quick review of your aims and objectives that you set out at the start of your project, and use these to kind of give you an idea of what you want to do with your war diary. So do that as a first thing. Right. So I'm an archaeologist, and in terms of the analysis that I do of the data that I get from war diaries, I spend a lot of my time mapping data. This helps me to do things such as analyze trends in construction, analyze trends in concentrations of defences and things like that. And one of the ways that I do this is through a GIS package or a geographical information system called QGIS. And I've been using this for well over 10 years now, give or take. It's taken me a while to get used to using this as an operating system or a GIS system, but it is well worth doing. It's a professional grade GIS, and most importantly, it is completely free. So one of the kind of like barriers often encountered with people doing research as a member of the public, for example, is that a lot of programs and things like that used to analyze data are extremely expensive, or you need to pay a monthly subscription, for example. And QGIS is absolutely perfect in that it gives you the ability to create professional grade maps, GIS data to a professional standard for free. So I'll be using this program primarily for mapping, but also creating the data sets that I'm going to accession to the Norfolk Historic Environment Service in the future. So everything like my shapefile data and my mapping data will go off to them and help them demonstrate the significance of Second World War defences in Norfolk through the planning process, which is a vital one of the vital roles that your local historic environment service does. So do check out QGIS. I'm not going to do a series on how to use this. There are plenty of videos on Facebook and YouTube and elsewhere on how to use this as a thing. And the thing is, if I do like tutorial series looking at QGIS, these are going to quickly become obsolete because this program is updated extremely frequently, and I can barely keep up with how often it's updated. So yeah, just go on YouTube, learn the basics such as how to create geo packages and how to create point data and shape files and polygons and all this stuff, and how to do your, I can't remember the word. Each light layer has a table in the background, and no, the word's gone. But look into how to use this effectively. Look into archaeology-focused GIS tutorials and things like that to get yourselves up to speed with how you can process your data from your war diary. So let's have a look at some examples of the stuff I do with GIS. So one of the first things that I do in terms of kind of getting my head around what was going on in the local area is by mapping unit boundaries. So you'll find descriptions in your war diaries outlining which units were where and the boundaries within which they were located. So this is a key thing that I do to get my head around which units were where, from division level all the way down to brigade, battalion, and even company and platoon level, for example. And this gets my head around what was going on in my local area. Sorry, you'll have to excuse these little watermarks I've had to put in these images because there's a lot of thieving Stevens out there who will nick any data they can find. I've just put those in there to try and dissuade people from nicking my data and passing it off as their own. Anyway, so yeah, starting off with, this is what I've got so far for Norfolk. I'm going to be doing a blog on this in the next week or so, just to kind of outline the process that I'm going through and show what I'm finding. And this is what I have so far. So from the 18th Division War Diary in 1939, I've been able to map the boundaries of the divisions that were deployed to defend Norfolk and wider East Anglia. So we have, the 18th Division, the 54th Division, and then inland in a mobile capacity, because the defences weren't purely static, especially throughout the Second World War. We have the 48th Division, the 51st Division located inland to counterattack into these areas. And they've also been able to map the brigade locations or boundaries within the 18th Division as well, which has given me an idea of who was where and helping me to identify which units were most likely defending Thetford in this early period, 1939 to 1940. Obviously, I'm going to continue this process because the 18th Division, their boundaries were shifted, and this is something that needs to be demonstrated to show how the defences were by no means static and how their organisation changed a lot over a specific period. So demonstrating this visually is helping me to get a better idea of what was going on. I'm just going to kind of go towards East Yorkshire now. So most of my research so far has been taking place in East Yorkshire, and I've got some really nice examples there showing how units were developed over time. So this is the 66 Division division's brigade sector. So the 66th Division were the first division deployed to defend East Yorkshire and North Yorkshire and a much wider area. Done this, but I've been able to use their war diaries to map these brigade boundaries. So this is the brigade boundaries from 1939 to 1940, and these were soon changed with the introduction of the 2nd Division. So you've seen how the administration and how units were deployed within a division changed quite significantly from 66th Division to the 2nd Division. And this is something, like I say, when these divisions were replaced and moved, their boundaries that they allocated changed drastically. And this is something that needs to be demonstrated. And one way I'm doing this is through mapping. So this is something you can do over time, is build up these boundaries, see how administration changed, see how the units were deployed differently through change of the units. And you can map and see these trends. That's something well worth doing for your local area. Next, in my previous video, you'll know that I mentioned location statements. If you haven't checked that out already, please do. And one thing that's really useful to do is, and this takes a lot of time, it's not straightforward, but one thing to do is go through these location statements and map the individual units where they were within a given area. A really interesting or useful thing to note with this is that once you've done this once for a division, you can just copy and paste that layer and move the units around on that map as well for each location statement. But this is something well worth doing because you can see which units were where. It will help you then focus your attention on the area you are researching, so you can pick out which units and which battalions were in a specific area and follow their war diaries and pick out what you need in a given area. So this is just one location statement for the 2nd Division from August 1940. You can see there's a lot going on, and it helps to quickly dispel this myth that the units were deployed piecemeal. They were deployed in thin lines. They weren't. This is an entire division which was deployed throughout the county of East Yorkshire. So again, this is something I'll be doing for the Thetford and Norfolk defences as well. I think one of my cats is having a play in the background. Just ignore her. Right. Operation orders. So again, I mentioned these in the previous video. So operation orders are something that are well worth mapping as well. So this is the disposition of a battalion, so the King's Own Royal Regiment in Filey Bay. And doing something like this is really, really useful to show how a unit was deployed in the landscape, for example, and something that you can create a really nice little case study by doing this. And then other sources of information, so petrol pumps for mobilisation in 2 division units. So this has taken me a very long time to identify these, but you find massive lists of petrol pumps in a given area which were to be immobilised by the regular and territorial army troops, not the Home Guard, in a specific area. It wasn't until much later that the Home Guard took on this responsibility. And mapping these can be interesting and a bit of fun sometimes, but it shows you how extensive the planning was in terms of these operation orders. Something else you can also plan are movements of troops, and I don't think I've put an example in of this, but mapping troop movements is really, really cool to show where units were moving across the country as well, to show their wider context. And something, again, I'll be doing for the Thetford research is mapping this story of the units that were defending Thetford in the wider area. So, I tend to take a different approach to timelines. So, you can always create a very simple timeline in a linear fashion using words, but I like to, because with the war diaries you're able to map these events, I like to create what I like to call a spatial timeline. So, showing these events as they happened over a given area, and the way that I create the attribute tables, which is the word I couldn't remember, behind this data, I can then potentially use this to do other things like creating animations which show when these units happened over time and show how these things built up. It's not something I've currently got in my skill set, but over time that's something I want to do, is like create an animation to make this a bit more interesting, which is probably going to get stolen now as an idea. But anyway, so yeah, you might want to just create a linear timeline. You know, I create this in map form just to make it a bit more visually pleasing, but I will create a timeline of events for the town of Thetford to show the units that were coming in and show various exercises that were going on. So this is just an idea of how you can do that. What have we got next? So you might want to also refine your order of battle. So I haven't started doing this yet, but as I mentioned in an earlier video, you know, this order of battle is quite important. What you can then start to do is build up fill this in with the actual units that were, you know, deployed at these various levels. So you can start to map who was the command, who was the corps, who were the divisions, and show a detailed order of battle over time as well. And this is something that Mike, who's the researcher that I hired to go to the National Archives on my behalf, he's doing this, and he's looking really, really good. Where he's got like a really nice kind of illustration of which units were making up a very specific area or a very specific area's defences, and that's something I'll eventually do over time. It was one of my key outputs for my research. So after all that, hopefully that's giving you some ideas of some of the things that you can do with your war diary data. So as this is the last video in this series, I might do some follow-up videos in the future, but I'm currently out of ideas now, and I think I've kind of covered everything that you need to know to at least get started and start to present your data. So if you do have any questions or anything you'd like me to try and focus on in the future— oh, one of my cats is going crazy in the background. What are you up to, Pepper? She's having a mad rush around. If you have any questions, then post them in the chat, you know, below, and maybe in the future I can do like a little Q&A video where I address some of your questions. But it's over to you now. I'm going to kind of pass the torch down to you to, you know, to take on your own research. If you want to find out more, then I do recommend checking out my website, which is chriscolonco.wordpress.com. I'll put this links to this in the chat below. On there as well, a new thing that I'm going to start doing is kind of documenting my research, the path through my research, through a little blog, which you can find on the website, which is titled "Remember the Regulars Thetford Blog." And this is just going to outline some of my findings as I go along, and hopefully act as a way of kind of showing how I'm building up the picture of information, but also highlight some of the issues that surround research and various other things, and some of them of which I've already alluded to, such as, you know, copyright infringement and data theft and all this stuff, which is a massive blight, but unfortunately very common and something that, you know, people like myself shouldn't have to deal with. So I'm going to draw attention to that. How else can you find out more? So please do check out the UK Second World War Heritage website. This is a web page that I started with my friend and colleague Peter Hibbs, and the aim of this has been to highlight the issues surrounding investigation of surviving defence in the UK, in particular the ethical issues, but also aim to— girls, they're having an argument now. Also to highlight some of the issues that hamper investigation and some of the poor attitudes that focus around anti-invasion defences. So we've started to provide guidance in the form of good practice guidelines, provide guidance information to kind of encourage ethical participation in recording anti-invasion defences, because there's a lot of unethical stuff going on, such as, you know, trespass and annoying landowners deliberately and not integrating or not incorporating information into historic environment records and all this stuff. And we're trying to change some of these poor behaviours that have developed over the last 20 or 30 years, unfortunately. So please do check out the UK Second World War Heritage website if you want to find out more information. And finally, thank you and goodbye. So yeah, if you have any further questions, let me know. And that's it. I'm going to just say thank you and goodbye. Thank you for watching. Thank you to NNAS for funding these videos. And yeah, keep watching the channel for any future content. But yeah, ultimately, thank you for watching, and I'll see you later. Goodbye.